Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. What a program we have for you tonight. A couple of great people joining me. We'll have Dragon back live and in action here to talk about what's happened to him. Not just what he's been observing, but actually what has been happening to him while covering the pro-Palestine protest encampment at McGill University. We're going to dig into that a little bit more because of some observations he made at the university yesterday and the day before. 2 days where he was kind of pushed off the property by protesters. We'll get into it. Also, the Northern Lights. Huge solar storm brewing out there. And the first geomagnetic pulses hitting Earth now. It's apparently going to trigger one heck of a light show. The Northern Lights might be seen as far away as Texas this weekend. In addition to that, Vladimir Zelensky managed to dodge a bullet. Quite literally, there was an attempt to assassinate him. As a result, he has fired his bodyguard. We have all that, and if all works out, Carl Larson from Ukraine Defense Support will join us again later in the broadcast to help us make sense, give us more context, a better perspective on what's going on with that war in Ukraine. So, stay with me. On the other side of this, we'll bring Dragon in and we'll dig into the details surrounding these pro-Palestinian encampments at universities, which continue to grow across Canada and the United States. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's bring Dragon in live now from Montreal, where he has been doing a great job, tough job, out there covering these encampments, and specifically he's been at McGill University in Montreal over the past few nights. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Welcome, sir.
So,
Happy to be here.
yes, and tonight the coverage is going to be a little bit different because we're going to talk about what happened to Dragon last night and the night before, where protesters pushed him back, essentially. Not so much physically, but told him to get off the lawn. Get off my lawn! At McGill University. We're going to talk about why that sort of happened, but more than that, you've made kind of an interesting observation or two while covering the encampment. I'm going to throw it over to you, Dragon, and kind of let you tee this up.
Well, at some point we have been witnessing some boards and those banners that was on display, right? And one of them was displaying the Irish flag next to the Palestinian flag, and in the between of them there were what you call the Triskeli or the Triskelion symbol, which is a Gaulish symbolism, right? And the symbolism of it, or the meaning actually, is the rising and the dawn of the sun, and basically all in the between of the day. So what's going on with that? I've been researching and digging into the whole thing. I've been even finding Hinduism meanings or origins from it, and also that it has been used by some division from the Nazis back in 1941, if my memory is correct. So
I see. So some of the
there's a lot
symbols
to
on
dig
display,
into.
some of the symbols on display that you were observing, you went in to find sort of the background, the history of them, how they've been used, what they really mean. And so this
Yes.
symbol specifically, you're saying, is something that you found with a direct connection back to Nazi Germany.
Yes. Well, actually, if I can show you on my other phone, it will be probably more easier. But this is the symbol that I've seen
Okay.
between the two flags. So basically, that I like symbolism. I like stuff like this. So basically, I was wondering what was the relation between the two, right? So this is where I kind of digged up into it, and I found some interesting linked or dots to make probably. And is there anything that we can probably assess about? Well, if you look into the division from the SS in Germany, was used by basically Nazis. This symbol probably can be related to the Irish extremist group that is actually that was a thing back in the days. If you remember, there's a
You
lot
mean
of
you're
cultural.
talking about the IRA for it, the Irish
Yeah.
Republican Army? Okay. Which by some estimates, some viewed the IRA at the height of its activities as a terrorist organization. But I kind of see where you're going with this, but I'll let you continue. I see some commonalities and a thread that sort of runs between these organizations that I'll comment on, but I'll let you continue.
Well, where I make the connection is the way that they were acting for the last few days, right? I mean, I was being objective, I was being unbiased, I was trying to be as human being as possible, and just wanted to show what their message was, what it was all about. And actually, I was just, not trying to depict anything wrong about their doing, I mean, they're just expressing their freedom of expression, and that's all what I wanted to show. But being shunned and basically shut down or shut up, basically, this is not making
Sure.
the thing easy.
So let's show people what happened. This was 2 nights ago. This was your first really negative encounter with protesters there. You'd been there the night before this.
And you can see you can see the symbol right there in the middle.
Right. And you can also see the Irish flag to the left of that, which at the time I really didn't, in passing, I thought an Irish flag, I wonder why. But we'll get into that a little bit more as well. So you have the Irish flag, this symbol, and the Palestinian flag. Now, of course, you would like you might have had the protesters or the organizers or someone there explain more about this, but instead of having a conversation with you, they gave you this greeting instead. What they're afraid of.
I don't even know. But thing is that we're not here to push people as criminal or what. They are just doing what they need to do as
So
freedom
told
of
you to get off the
expression
lawn,
and showing,
get out of there. Came
they
over
can
and
speak
started
out
stuffing
loud.
these umbrellas in your face. Well, let's try to avoid any kind of conflict or confrontation with these folks. Otherwise, I'll
Right.
have to come down there and and maybe assist you a little bit. This is really, how shall I put this? Disturbing to see this kind of Let me back this up because I think what we have here is. Oh, actually, no, here they go. Okay. So I have got a cue.
Chanting, they're doing their, they're protesting. And, well, as you can see, our freedom of press is being kind of suppressed. So it's kind of weird because we're in a public domain, and that's what it is. And we're also in a free country.
And you've had no conversation with them? They don't even know do they even know who you are? Have
Nope.
they asked?
They haven't asked any question or who I am. They don't even know from what type of media I'm working or if I'm working for anyone. So that's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird. Well, I'm sorry that you're going through that, Dragon. This is...
It's part of the job.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to stay calm and stand our ground to some degree as well, because you have every right to be there just as much as they do.
Exactly.
Yeah. It sounds like there are speeches. Okay, so that gives you a little taste of what Dragon was going through 2 nights ago. And, Dragon, we've seen other journalists in other cities, at other encampments, other little Gazas, as they're being described by some, engaging in similar pushback against journalists, shunning them, freezing them out essentially, kicking them off property. What are your thoughts at this point about what you went through tonight?
Well, if I take, for example, Robert Krajcik, that was, I think, Rebel News correspondent in Ottawa, okay, for example, the encounter that he has was pretty much rougher than the one I had, right? And, well, it's kind of scary in a way because, I could have probably have been attacked at some point when I realized the whole thing, because he was probably also being attacked at some point. For that, I don't know. I should probably ask him, though. The idea is that, well, you see, I felt pretty much, I would say, invested into it. I still feel invest into it. And, I mean, it's kind of a battle between the right and the left, basically. And I've been feeling it. It's basically what it is.
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that, because I do see a thread that runs from that symbol you showed us, which has ties to National Socialism in the past, the Irish flag, which some people would, Irish nationalists in the IRA, for instance, and I don't mean to conflate things, and I don't mean to speak out of school here or put words into anybody's mouth, but they're not talking to us. So we have to try to figure out to some degree what these things mean. Why would they put an Irish flag? It's because I would say that there is a layer of history that comes from Ireland that some people would put forward as a problem with colonialism. It's that ideology that's being taught in schools. That's where the IRA came from was concerns, feelings of marginalization, feelings that of oppression, even under from the British government, the Crown, and the IRA was a nationalist, Marxist, socialist, national socialist organization. Today, more moderate in its activities, but they did engage in terrorist activities, going back like even to the 90s, and people were killed. They were armed. There was a real battle, a war that was being fought within Ireland because of the IRA. And I think that's why you're seeing that Irish flag displayed there. It's this anti-colonial ideology that runs through Ireland, Palestine. It runs all the way through here, especially for First Nations in North America, in Canada, in some other parts of the world. I think even to a degree, in a slightly different way, even in Scotland, where they have a sort of an anti-colonialist history or a thread that runs through their history in that manner. So yeah, I definitely see some commonalities and an ideological thread that ties these things together.
Yeah. As you can see, also there's I've seen this flag pulled next to the Palestinian flag, actually, which is the Iroquois flag, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, making sense
and,
to what you just said.
Right. And when you're going to all of these encampments in, I think, pretty much all the universities in Canada, you are seeing First Nations symbols being displayed there. You're seeing First Nations people there and supporters of First Nations causes. And that is also because you're seeing this rise in Canada of anti-colonialist sentiment, ideology. It's being taught in schools again, and it's on full display here on university and college campuses at these demonstrations. And that's why you heard the chants, folks, right here in Dragon's coverage over the past few nights, not just from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They've modified the chant there at times to be from Turtle Island to Palestine, occupation is a crime.
Because, one of the first night, if you remember well, one of the first night, one of the lady that did answer to us actually about the chanting about to the river, to the sea, she showed me something on the phone, right? What she showed me actually, and if I can come up with it, is basically the map from Palestine, right? And there's, on this part, there's the river, right? Or the sea, actually, and there's a river in the between. And you can make all the sense that it's like Montreal, basically. It's a small island in the river. So if you push back the people on one side, what are they going to do? They're all going to fall down in the seas. For what reason? Mm-hmm. So basically, this is what you can make up out of it, probably also.
Yes. And so the people that you did speak to were really people on the other side of the equation here. And they were the ones willing to talk to you pretty much. I think you got one guy the first night or second night there, I think, who was, and he was more neutral, but he seemed to be more on the protesters' side. Mm-hmm. But the other people had concerns, and they said that, as I recall the quote, and this I'm paraphrasing here, but they said that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is really a chant that means to wipe Israel off the face of the planet, and it's really a call to murder Jewish people. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, basically, to me also, it sounds like a call to genocide. So as you can see, that's the geography of Palestine. So you see, that's basically what she showed me. So that's the way it is. you can make out any observation out of it, but this is probably what the meaning out of it is. And it's sad because, I wanted to get there and just have a good conversation, see what was, the meaning, and learn as a human being, because I'm not Jewish. I'm Catholic. I don't know much of their culture and mores and stuff. So, I'm trying to learn as a human being also. So that's the job of a journalist, being inclusive and also interested into other culture without having any bias or judgment.
Now, I have to say as well that tonight I'm just receiving some messages here from people saying that we might be not running properly on the Rumble channels, and I don't know. It seems to be running okay here for me. I see people in the chat, and I'm just putting a message in the chat on Rumble on the main channel. Can people see us?
I see no live actually on my other phone. You're probably right, sir. Oh, yeah. No. I see you. Refresh. Solar Storm live.
People refresh. Rumble's okay. And Stoic Teacher actually here, Dragon, is making a good comment and helping us out here. It says that symbol, the triple spiral, is a Celtic and pre-Celtic symbol found on Irish Mesolithic and Neolithic sites. And it is
exactly.
It is ancient, really. I'm not really well versed in
3,200 BCE.
Right, but it's been used by a number of different cultures, and in some cases for political purposes, as you say, even by Nazi Germany. Not in the same way as the swastika, I guess, but it was utilized there in the same way, I guess.
It was a form of swastika, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
But a different one.
Right. And
I can probably show you the image.
Yeah. And so, again, why it was on display here specifically, no one will talk to Dragon, so we can't, they won't.
So this is the 27th Division of the SS, which was using this symbol, and it is actually from the link that you can get from the Triskeli symbol. So
it's interesting. Yeah, and I know,
there's
Laurie's
a lot of link.
And Laurie has been on the program a number of times talking about the history of some of those Arab nations and their links to Hitler and Germany in World War II. Of course, you had a number of countries, Italy. Even in the early stages of the conflict for a while, Russia was working with Germany until everything fell apart in their relationship.
Well, Germany, actually, what happened is that they have betrayed Russia, basically. So this is why they have fallen right into the first curve of the Second World War.
Yeah, and they went in and divided Poland up, and then we ended up with the Second World War afterward. But anyway, without getting too deep into all of that here tonight, the real larger issue is why they won't talk to journalists and what the ideology is behind that. And I would say that there's an authoritarian mindset that, and even an inevitable progression to authoritarianism when you have this kind of socialism at the root of what they're protesting for, where all of this comes from. This is a form of nationalism, and there's Islamic ideology that comes with the Hamas group. It's obviously very authoritarian. Hamas still seen by some governments as a terrorist organization. Of course, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. It depends on your perspective on these things politically.
Well, if you, I mean, the thing is that Canada is a free country. You can say whatever you want till you're not, especially saying anything violent or advocating for violence. So the thing is that when you come here as someone from another country, you shouldn't bring your ideology of being like echo chambering or basically like not being able to show. We give you the permission to show and to be loud, basically. So what happened is that I've seen an ideology coming back here from their culture and shutting us down from there. Because what is happening is that, well, they are living in a country where you cannot show basically your freedom of speech. If you show freedom of speech, you can be shut down by the government. There's a lot of things that can happen in Palestine. So is there any probable, for example, yesterday, the guy that says, do you have the best interest of the student at heart? That's the guy what he asked me yesterday.
Sure.
So
I've got that queued up.
My thinking is that, is there a probable risk for someone living here in Canada that is probably like one of those students is probably are going to go back in their country one day, right? But if their faces is shown here, right, it can probably endanger their life back home. So this is probably the idea. But I mean, if I cannot ask you the question, and if you don't answer me, this is the reason why, or if there's any other reason that is probably logical behind the whole thing, I cannot know. I cannot assess. I only can assess myself and make up any resolution out of it.
Well, let's run this clip from that encounter.
Actually, I'm from the press, so I have all the rights to be here.
You can have rights all you want, but we don't want you on the lawn.
Why?
Well, maybe.
I don't think that you have the best interests of the students at heart.
Sorry?
I don't think you have the best interests of the students at heart.
Why is that?
Do you have the best interests of the students at heart?
I
Ask
do
him what
actually.
authority he has.
What authority you have to ask me to be off the lawn?
Authority that I'm telling you to get off the lawn.
Okay, because actually I'm from the press and I'm a free speech advocate. So,
Great. Well, you can be a free speech advocate on the paper, please.
or
Well, why don't
which
ask
reason?
him what right he
You don't
has
want
that's
you-
more than yours?
What right? What right you have more than I
I'm
am?
just telling you to get off. I'm not the cops. I'm just telling you to get out of here.
Yeah, so
Okay.
who are you?
Please
He's-
get out of here.
you
So
have
who
no
are
right.
you for those kind of right? I'm just a
I'm not-
citizen. I'm a Montrealer.
There's
As
many,
you?
Listen, there are many places you can't go in as a citizen. You can't go into a professor's office. You can't go into an elementary school. You can't go into someone's house.
Even with a press.
That's because those are places of private property, and you don't just walk into somebody's office without permission. There, he's quite right, but that's not the point. The point is he he doesn't control that space. That's not his property. They've seized
No.
that common area where the public is invited really by the university to come and enjoy the space, and that's not his. So the real question is this your property? That's what should be asked of him ultimately. It's not, is this your lawn? Doesn't belong to you. So who are you to tell anybody to get off this lawn? That what he's doing, what they're doing there, frankly, to just not mince words, is illegal.
And he's not even of one of the deans.
Yeah, he doesn't represent the university. He's not with them. He has no connection
He's
to the
probably a
property. It's not his.
teacher. He's probably a teacher, but not a dean's, because I've
Yep.
looked into it.
But you don't even know who this person is, right?
No.
And a teacher doesn't own the property either. A teacher can't restrict your access that way, just arbitrarily. I mean, wow.
It's kind of sad.
It
And
makes it.
I would say he looks like perfectly Quebecer type of guy. So I mean, to me, it's like you're a Quebecer or a Canadian, call it what you will, and we're in a free country, and what you're doing right now is shutting your own freedom of speech by shutting me down. This is kind of what can I do from it?
Well, I think that these people, a lot of them, are not well versed enough in the issue that they're protesting for or against. They don't really understand the issues well enough to actually engage in a real conversation with you about it, or explain even why they are there, because you really were there in good faith. You just
Yes.
giving them an opportunity to say whatever they would like, and they chose not to talk to you. And they're doing the same thing to many, many other journalists, if not all journalists, except for, I think, maybe a few streamers that are not really journalists. They're just there to.
I don't remember what the guy did call me yesterday. Something like a false or whatever type of journalist, or like a basement type of guy. But it is what it is, right?
I don't know. It's you would think that if they're out there protesting, they would want to talk to the media, to explain what their position is, to be friendly, to win over the hearts and the minds. But their approach, and I've seen this over the years many times with protesters just like this. The truth of the matter is, mixed. Like the first couple of nights you were there, you really didn't have, first night, no problems. Next night, you're told now you can't go behind some tarp that they had erected, and why, we don't know. And then
it took about like 5 nights. Yeah,
and
5 nights to go there to have some encounters and kind of scruffy type of, yeah.
So things have changed, and what we're seeing repeatedly on these campuses is you have what I would call perpetual protesters, even professional protest organizers who come in and sort of take on a leadership role, and then they start to direct these people who are there organically. There's a lot more going on with these protests than just a bunch of concerned students who don't want to see children killed in Gaza. It's not that.
Well, actually, on the first day, okay, there were nothing really scruffy, but where there's like the square where there's the chanting going on, right? At some point, the chanting was over, and I seen a girl kind of went like, looking at the guy and speaking and pointing at me like, look, you got a camera and showing us that.
Yeah, don't talk to that guy.
So this is where I think the mouth-to-mouth word kind of spreaded that I was probably a press kind of guy, and coming back and forth every day kind of thing, kind of showed probably something. But I mean, the only thing I wanted to do is just show the world what it is,
So from a legal perspective, what we're dealing with here is property that is essentially owned by the university. It's not so much a public place, it's university property that everybody is on there, including yourself. The front lawn, or the lawn that you are on, that is common area where the public is allowed to just wander around, walk, university property, but open to the public 24/7. You can be on that lawn at any time. Anybody can go there. So you have every right to be there, just as that person who is confronting you has a right to be there. No problem. Not even so much a right, because it is university property. So I guess you could say it's a privilege to be there, but you're allowed to be there because the university allows the public to go. You weren't doing anything wrong. What he did and those protesters, what they're doing is wrong, because they have seized the front lawn. They're occupying the lawn. They're camping.
Yeah, it's
on
an
the
occupation.
Lawn. Right. And so police are standing back, and you went and spoke to the police before that, and you noticed that they weren't on the lawn. They were off to the side someplace. That's because they will really only go in if they receive a complaint from the university, because it's not like a public roadway. It isn't some just Crown-owned land. This is university property. So they're just standing back. They see that there is the potential for, there are public safety issues in place. So they're there to try and keep the public peace. So unless they need to intervene, they'll basically wait for a complaint from the university. University security was on site, though, right?
It's city kind of turf, yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry?
The university security was on site. Police also indicated to you that they were looking to university security to provide the first layer of public safety. And so security was kind of sitting back, and they've let this protest happen, right? And this occupation happen, but it has grown over time. It's evolving. Now they've become emboldened. Now they're restricting access to other people, infringing on people's rights, infringing on your right to freely move about and enjoy the same common area as all the other people there. They're saying, no, anybody can commit, but not you, and not you, and not you, and not you. They're picking and choosing who gets to come on the property, but they have no jurisdiction. They have no authority. And again, so as he's saying, get off this lawn, we don't want you here, under whose authority? Is this your property? And the answer is clearly no. He has no business, no right, no authority to say that to you at all. The only thing that allowed him to get away with what he got away with is that he's got a mob behind him. And so he's using intimidation and fear and the threat of, it conveyed, not explicit, but you can see that there's a danger there of escalation that could potentially become something confrontational and maybe even violent. So, of course, everybody wants to avoid that. So under those conditions, you leave the lawn. And that's not right.
Yep.
That's using coercion and implied threat, I would say, in order to coerce you and act like a dictator and kick you off the lawn that he doesn't own. He's just... there's a real irony in it, Dragon, because they're claiming that basically Israel is engaged in a big land grab and that they have no justification or legal right to have the state that they have, that's an occupation. So what have they done? They've turned around and they've seized the property at the university, which they are occupying, engaging in exactly the kind of activity that they're accusing somebody else of.
Well, this is where I will grab the segue to the actually the Triskeli, right? In a certain way, you can go back to the Hinduism ideology, which goes to the term dharma. And dharma means actually a lot of things. And, well, in one of the terms, it's basically like a term for a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. So you can make it up what you want, but there's like some ideology thing behind that, I would say.
Well, I'm
sorry for my
very
Hinduism.
hard. I'm trying very hard to be, impartial with all of these things. I absolutely support people's right to free speech, freedom of expression, freedom to, I think everybody should have the right to protest. But there's a line. There are limits to these things. And when you begin to infringe on other people's rights, when you start to seize property and occupy property, when you begin to, we've seen in the States at, some of the university campuses there, extreme acts of vandalism, building occupations, spray painting the hallways of universities with graffiti, smashing windows, building barricades. And even at the University of Calgary, we saw everything kind of come to a real head within the last day. Protesters there, an encampment at the University of Calgary, finally took their encampment down, but police had to go in and ultimately break the thing up. I have video of that. Let's run a little bit of it here. Pretty dramatic stuff. This is, I think, this is the most aggressive I've seen police so far in Canada. But I guess they're being pushed, right? So here we go.
The front line of the students has been dispersed. As seen there, we're utilizing pepper bombs.
Whoa, we just had an explosion. We just had an explosion here. They just tear gas people. They're coming. I gotta run. I'm gonna get arrested. Okay, they're shooting. They're shooting. They're shooting. They're shooting. Oh God. Oh my God. They're shooting. People, let me get this at a better angle. Look at that. Look at that. They got guns. They got guns pointed at people right now. Okay.
No, I would think that
Okay, I got the tear gas in my eyes.
You brought it here. Another explosion right there. Another explosion right there. They're throwing big bombs, big tear gas bombs at us.
No,
look at the
bombs,
people.
they're tear gas canisters,
They're getting the people bad. Lanatullah alayk.
And these kids will be traumatized for the rest of their days, in a way, because it's kind of traumatized, seeing like a court of police coming on to you and move. It's like, oh shit. I mean, I would be traumatized for the rest of my day seeing this.
Well, I'm sure they won't forget it. The description from the videographer, I think, was not entirely accurate. And I'm not sure, but I sort of doubt the cops were going to use, if there were any shots fired, not live ammunition, maybe rubber bullets. Those were not bombs. Those were tear gas canisters and flashbangs to make things uncomfortable for the protesters. It's unfortunate that things come to that point. But again, they were there for days, and it is university property. So basically, they're trespassing and engaging in other illegal activity. And if they're not going to move, and the university asks police to move in, it kind of comes to that. And I would go beyond that, and I would say that in many instances like this, as I've seen over the years, these kinds of protests, which honestly, there's every indication that this is being driven by the progressive political left in this country, and some from the, I would say, the ideological extreme right converging with national socialist ideology kind of blending together and uniting them on this particular issue. But these people have been in many, this is Antifa, this is Black Lives Matter protesters, the Occupy this, the Occupy that groups. And that's what I say, we're seeing faces in the crowds here who have been at many other protests over the years, who are stepping up and kind of taking on authoritarian leadership roles where they just, by assuming a place of authority or making it look like they're in charge, they get these students to kind of just go along with whatever it is that they tell them they have to do. Police kind of chasing them out here. And I guess there were 5 people arrested there at the University of Calgary, which is, again, unfortunate, Dragon, but I'll throw it over to you for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and actually, I think it doesn't have to go this far, right? And if you can draw a conclusion with what happened, for example, with the truckers that has been, I think, 3 weeks in Ottawa before the cavalry comes into play. I mean, we're approaching now 2 weeks from them being in campuses all around the world. So, I mean, is there some conclusion we can draw from that? Because as a citizen, I mean, I don't mind you to express your freedom of expression. But if my freedom of expression in Ottawa has been kind of suppressed after 2 weeks, I mean, I would probably argue that thing can be probably balanced on both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to say, but
well, I it would be in my view, it would be a whole lot easier to win people over to your side if you were more welcoming and include people and not take someone like yourself and just automatically exclude you. It's an opportunity for them to make a friend and take advantage of your offer to share their messaging. But instead we're getting...
it would have been an opportunity for me also to learn things from another culture that I'm kind of unfamiliar with. So as a human being, right, I'm inclined to learn.
And as a result, too, we're seeing, unfortunately, Jewish students feeling very intimidated as well. Now, this was actually from yesterday, but we didn't run this clip. I'm going to run it here tonight. This is a law student from the University of Windsor who just graduated, actually, I believe. Her name is Sydney Greenspoon, attended a news conference on Parliament Hill yesterday, which is timely because they just established another new encampment at the University of Windsor within the last 24 hours, as I understand it. So another encampment beginning to take hold there, take root. And this is a student in Ottawa talking about her experience on campus and what she's dealing with. Let me bring this up for you. Here we go. All right. Sydney Greenspoon.
Good morning. My name is Sydney Greenspoon, and I have recently completed my final year at the University of Windsor Faculty of Law. This past year, I served as co-president of Windsor Law's Jewish Students Association, the only Jewish organization or club on our campus. Today, I am here to share my story as a Jewish university student in Canada. UWindsor, like many other campuses, has become an unsafe place to be Jewish. It is a campus that allows anti-Semitism to flourish, causing the few Jewish students it has to suppress our identity. The failure of university administrators to protect Jewish students has allowed this hateful climate to thrive. Anti-Semitism did not begin on October 7th. However, since that horrific day, Jew hatred on university campuses has surged to unprecedented levels. Here are but a few examples of the way my university administration, professors, and peers have supported the unjust discrimination of Jewish students this past year. On October 7th, when Windsor's Jewish Students Association posted a statement of solidarity with Israelis on Instagram, the Student Law Society demanded almost immediately that it be removed. At the same time, the SLS informed all campus clubs of a new and, in my view, discriminatory rule against any politicized posts. We fought back, and the SLS ultimately rescinded their rule.
Okay, so that's
Wow.
one clip from her. She continues here. Let me just bring this up.
Palestinian Solidarity Group held their first of many rallies. Windsor's Palestinian Solidarity Group held their first of many rallies on October 10th, a celebratory event to mobilize for the Day of Resistance, with posters depicting the very same Hamas paragliders involved in the massacre of over 1,200 innocent Israelis. Rallies such as these that glorify violence and so-called die-ins held on campus became a normal occurrence, with no condemnation by the administration, despite the constant disruption to the academic environment and direct intimidation of Jewish students. I have personally heard "Death to the Jews" chanted in Arabic and seen posters with crude rhetoric like "Save from Nazis to become Nazis." I have been told that I am not welcome at certain events on campus as they are explicitly anti-Zionist. I was effectively shut out from the student debate on adopting the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement at UWindsor, which was ultimately adopted. When the Jewish Students Association participated in a Clubs Day event, we were verbally harassed, threatened, and called murderers by other students. We fled the event in fear of our safety. After reporting this incident to university authorities, we were told that nothing could be done.
And one more.
A recording of Jewish students' interview regarding Holocaust Remembrance Day on the student-run radio station CJAM was abruptly removed as students were greatly upset that the Holocaust was discussed without reference to the war in Gaza. Many law professors intentionally depart from the curriculum to demonize the only Jewish state and agitate with false, radical, and outlandish anti-Semitic rhetoric. At an on-campus event, one professor was met with applause from students after boasting about telling a Jewish student that he hoped she would not return to his class as he was unable to provide a balanced view on Israel and Palestine, insinuating that Zionists were not welcome in his classroom. As demonstrated here today, my story as a Jewish university student is sadly not unique. As a proud Canadian, I've always stood by our values of equality, tolerance, and respect. My fear is that the irrational Jew hatred that is permeating our society, especially within our universities, has begun to erode these values and the rule of law. Thank you.
And I can only say that, from my perspective, I would love to still talk to these protesters and to provide some balance, equal perspective.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad because that was my duty, actually. Go there, have their perspective, and bring it on.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It's kind of sad. And I'm sorry for her that she had to actually live with that. And as a good thought for your mind, it's to ask yourself, where is this country going right now? So.
Yeah. Well, all of this ties in, as we've said before, this ideology, the anti-colonialist ideology, the chanting from Turtle Island to Palestine, occupation is a crime. It's a call for the return of all land to indigenous peoples, Turtle Island being all of North America and part of Central America. This is worrisome. I'm seeing convergence happening here. I don't know how far along it is, but I'll tell you, in the last year, I've seen a lot of things that have really surprised me politically in this country, where I never thought I would ever see the day where we're seeing this level of anti-Semitic rhetoric out there, and attitude, bigotry, prejudice, division, fighting. I never thought I'd see this in Canada, but here we are. It's really blowing my mind.
Yes, it is mine too. I mean, mine is blowing, and I don't know what to say, but guys, we need to be more open. We need probably just to not only open our eyes, but our minds, because if you don't expand it, you just stay in the echo chamber, and you need to learn. We all need to learn, culturally speaking. So,
well,
and be accepting.
A lot of people are seeing this war over in Israel, Gaza, this conflict over there is something that isn't really our war, that it's not really supposed to affect us. But here it is. Because it isn't really just about Gaza, in my view. This is a global struggle. This is part of the Third World War that we're already engaged in. We're already fighting this war, just in a different way here in Canada, in the United States. The war is on these university campuses, and Canada is involved, whether we like it or not. And I'd say the same thing goes for this conflict in Ukraine as well.
Yeah, it's a cultural war that we're living here, most of all. But, I mean, the tension is palpable in a way, and you can probably feel that in not so long from now, in a soon and near future, it might be more than just that. It might get to a kinetic situation, which I wouldn't like to have.
Well, here in Canada and the U.S., we're seeing the war being fought in through protest, through information warfare, through cyber wars, cyber warfare. In fact, even out in British Columbia, The government there has acknowledged that there was this huge cyber attack that affected government networks. This was stuff that happened back last month, but tonight they're indicating that this cyber attack came from some sort of state actor or state-sponsored actors, which means that it's a foreign government that put the government, the British Columbia provincial government, computer infrastructure under attack, but they're not revealing exactly what they know or where it's coming from. They're just acknowledging that it was some sort of foreign entity or government, some foreign state that targeted and went after British Columbia's computer systems. So there's another example of how that war is being fought right here. But out there on the front lines, that's where you were. I mean, you're just there covering it as a genuine journalist. And
Thank you, sir.
Trying to do your job, but it's very difficult in these times. Did you feel unsafe, Dragon?
Well, not really. I would say that, well, the only night that I was feeling unsafe was probably 2 nights ago when it was rainy and we had like 5 or 6 umbrella around me. So yeah, this is probably the most intense moment that I had. But I wasn't really afraid. I was just doing my job, and I mean, I was being polite. So I would have argued that if I'm staying polite, I would probably not have any problem or altercation, if you will. But you know, it's kind of, it's a risk, you know. I mean, anyone with a unbright mind or more extremist type of way would probably have just jumped on my stuff and take anything. But I mean, it's part of the job. I know how to defend myself, and I mean, well, it's not what I want, but
yeah. Well, again, you know,
push come to shove.
I just have to compliment you. You kept your cool. You like I've seen. I don't really think I've seen any real journalists out there, lose their temper or anything at this point. So you conducted yourself professionally. You did your job properly, and I thank you for what you've done. So just stay safe out there. And we're going to let you go. Our other guest is in the back room. Carl Larson will join us in a moment. And Dragon, thank you so much. And we'll keep coming back to you up there in Montreal, because the encampment there at McGill University is still in place, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think it is still, it's still there. So
yeah. Well,
I'll check out tomorrow.
Sure. Hopefully people up there change their mind and or minds and decide to start talking to us so we can have a greater understanding.
I would like to.
All right.
My pleasure, sir. Maverick family, have a good night.
Okay,
Take care.
We'll be back right after this. Hang on, folks.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're back, and let's bring our other guest in tonight. Our feature interview, Carl Larson, returns from Ukraine Defense Support. Welcome back, Carl.
Hi, Rick. Good to be here.
I really appreciate you joining us again tonight. There's been so much that's happened since your last visit here on the program. But maybe for those who missed the last broadcast with you, can you again just introduce yourself?
Sure. Happy to, Rick. So my name is Carl Larson, calling from Seattle, Washington, United States. I'm a American citizen, not Ukrainian, don't speak Ukrainian. However, in 2022, I spent 6 months in Ukraine, most of that time as a soldier in the International Legion. I was an ordinary rifleman and a platoon commander and the head of combat support for 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, Charlie 2 Platoon, and east of Kharkiv along the Severodonetsk River. Back then, that was the front line, and we were holding it against the orcs on the other side of the river. So that's me.
Okay. So now you're, I guess, trying to help raise awareness and bring your perspective on this war and why you think that Canada, the United States, the West, NATO needs to continue to support Ukraine in their efforts. Just since your last visit here, we've seen so much develop. We've seen these tactical nuclear weapon drills with Russia, which raised a lot of concerns. I'm going to throw it to you, though, because so many different subjects that we could talk about. What would you like to start with tonight? I just don't know where to begin.
Well, it's a big topic. I mean, what's going on in Europe now is unprecedented since World War II, and so there's a lot of different aspects of it we could cover off on. But so we should definitely talk about the nuclear weapon threats and extortion, and how we in the West should respond to that. What's worked in the past in responding to threats from the Soviet Union and from Nazi Germany, and what didn't work in the past. So we'll definitely talk about that. Just to finish up, though. So after returning to Seattle after 6 months of the front lines, so I started a group here, Ukraine Defense Support. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We've raised about over $300,000 worth of night vision drones, vehicles, medical supplies, you name it, we bought it and sent it, except for weapons. We don't do weapons. It's all non-lethal. So we got about 60 active volunteers, mostly here, but also around the country, and a few Canadians, some of which I'm very happy to have introduced you to. And there's a few other Canucks I got to send your way as well. So we're just, I may have set down my rifle, but I still view myself as a soldier in this war, and I feel this is the most important thing happening in the world, and so therefore I'm privileged to be part of it and stand on the right side of history, and therefore happy to share any information. I do talk to my soldier brothers and sisters all the time. I was just talking to 2 of them this morning, very early this morning, midday their time, right? You got to work around their schedule, and so I do have some pretty up-to-date information. And then from the front lines. And then my group's very involved in political advocacy in Washington, D.C. I spent over a week there last month, along with 18 other members from the state, as part of a 600-person conference on trying to break the logjam on that supplemental aid package. And as we discussed in the last program I joined, we did succeed in doing that. We got even more than we wanted. We got not just the $61 billion, but we also passed the Repo Act, which is really very promising, and then to reallocate frozen Russian money towards helping Ukraine. And then we got the Attackams missiles. So now we can force the Biden administration to do what they should have done years ago, really, and provide the Attackams missiles to Ukraine. So hopefully that moves forward quickly. So to pivot to your question about nuclear threats of nukes. I mean, it's an unfortunate fact of the world that we live in that really unpleasant people who are not our friends have the potential to destroy human civilization and existence. I mean, this is a fact that unfortunately humanity's had to live with for 80 years, sadly, or I guess 70 years. Now, what Putin has specifically done to try to ratchet up the threats is he has, it's already been known that he had tactical nukes, sometimes called suitcase nukes, brought into Belarus, right? These are small nukes that I shouldn't say suitcase. That implies that terrorists are going to get a hold of it. But nukes that are small enough to put on a short range missile, or to even put it in the back of a vehicle and drive across a border, or put on a boat and sail it down the river and sail it into Kyiv or something like that, or just put it on a missile and blow up a target in eastern Ukraine. So the question is, how should we, the West, react to this? To his So I should mention. So he's had these in Belarus ever since the start of the war, or the start of the invasion. What he's done recently is he's conducting exercises with these missiles and with these nukes. And this is just a clear way of ratcheting up pressure on the West to essentially not interrupt his aggressive actions in eastern Ukraine. And so the question is, what should we do about this? And so, I would look at history and how have we successfully contained other aggressive dictatorships that are, invading their neighbors or threatening to invade their neighbors. What's worked in the past and what hasn't worked? And I would say that the containment policy that was implemented against the Soviet Union was a phenomenal success. It took, 60 years in some cases, 50 years in other cases, but it did work. And it's, as far as I know, the first time in history that a empire collapsed without invading its neighbors first, which is quite an accomplishment. I think we have a lot to owe to the leadership of Reagan and Thatcher and the other strong leaders in the West who said, enough is enough. We can't kowtow to these people. We have to call out evil. This is an evil empire. Tear down this wall, right? Those were famous words, controversial words at the time, I should point out.
Yes.
So that worked. Unfortunately, it took a long time, and there were tens of millions of people who had to live slavish lives under communism for a long time under the political philosophy that's responsible for the most deaths and suffering in human history, communism. People forget that. They think the Nazis created the most misery in history. No, it's actually communism. Communists killed the most people in history. Important to keep that in mind. So that worked. What didn't work is when Neville Chamberlain in 1939, I believe it was, flew to Munich and made a deal with Hitler saying, okay, well, you can have the Sudetenland, but no more. And then he came back waving this piece of paper saying, well, this is the extent of Mr. Hitler's territorial ambitions in Europe. And we soon learned that that was not true. So, I think the majority of world leaders understand that this is saber rattling by Putin. It's political posturing. He's not really going to use nukes of any type, big or small, in Ukraine. You can say a lot of bad things about Putin, and I have, and I will, but he's not dumb. He's not stupid. He's not going to do something that is going to be counterproductive to his efforts to hold on to power. And he's not going to do something that is going to hurt his war aims in Ukraine. And if you Google the matter and you look at, well-known military historians and military analysts, they are pretty much unanimous in stating that using nuclear weapons in Ukraine would not hurt, or they would not help the Russians. They would hurt the Russians. Let's say, Putin decided to use nukes in Avdiivka or Chasiv Yar. First of all, he would have to evacuate all of his soldiers, or the vast majority of them, out of the area, and which would be a big red flag. And then let's say he blew up a concentration of Ukrainian command posts and ammo dumps and marshalling yards for their vehicles. Okay. First of all, there's going to be a huge radioactive no-go zone that his troops are not going to want to enter, even with NBC gear. And we trained for that in the U.S. Army when I was in the U.S. Army 20 years ago. But I was told if you had to put that stuff on, you better lean down and kiss your you-know-what goodbye, because you do not want to be in a nuclear blast zone. Maybe on the outskirts of it, you might be okay for a limited time, but so that's a problem. But a greater problem to Putin is the international condemnation that would occur after breaking the nuclear taboo. It's called the nuclear taboo, right? Only one country has used nukes in wartime, and that's the United States. And I think most reasonable people recognize that it was a good thing that we did, that we actually saved a lot of lives. We saved a lot of Japanese lives, frankly. They estimated it would take a million American dead to take Tokyo, but millions more Japanese would have died. I mean, they were giving them sharpened sticks to defend, and they didn't have bread to eat. They were eating sawdust at the end of the war. So and each other. So using nukes in that circumstance, I think was a mercy, frankly. Maybe some Japanese people would disagree with me, but but for someone to break that nuclear taboo now, I mean, I could see ISIS doing it. I could see Al Qaeda doing it. Sure, they'd love to do it, but Putin, every military analyst says that there's virtually zero chance that he'd do it. So I'd be curious what other guests on your show, suggest that we do in response to this. I'd be very curious. But essentially, what I've seen from world leaders is they're still staying the course. They're still supporting Ukraine, and Putin can rattle his saber all he wants. They're still going to keep doing the right thing.
Well, as you know, seems to me there are very limited, very only certain circumstances where even tactical nukes might be used by Russia, and that would include maybe seeing a massive advance of, say, NATO troops through Ukraine, and he wants to stop it because he can't really defend against it, or if there's some sort of direct attack within Russia's borders on a massive scale, and he wants to stop it there before they progress too far in. And he's his back is up against the wall, maybe, but even then, it's very risky. It's difficult to use them in a way that would be advantageous to him because he might kill his own people.
Yeah, so you pointed out they work a lot better in defense, especially defense of the homeland, than they do in offense.
Mm-hmm. And this scenario that we're involved in right now, these drills, it seems to me it's just PR. It's like sending a message, don't send NATO troops in here. I think that's what he's trying to convey.
Yeah, and I don't see NATO troops. I mean, I know Macron said some stuff. I know that some other countries have kind of puffed out their chests and said some stuff. I don't see maybe a few advisors here and there, but I don't see. I mean, I'm sure the CIA is in there already quite extensively, but I don't see us having boots on the ground in Ukraine anytime soon. I don't think the NATO alliance would agree to that because, of course, that would be a cause belli to Russia, and as soon as one of those troops was killed, then there'd be a lot of backlash, and people would ask questions like, why are those troops in there? Why are we, there's such a thing as providing support to an ally and doing the right thing. But then there's also, directly declaring war without declaring war. And so you have to walk that line. I don't see us sending troops.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to have you on here, because you're providing a totally different perspective on this than we're getting from, other, I would say, pro-Russian pundits out there, who I'm hearing say Ukrainian troops are pretty much decimated. The war is pretty much over. It's pointless in sending the aid over there, and it's only a matter of time if this continues. Very, very soon they'll have to bring in conscription or the draft, and you'll have to send your sons and daughters to fight on the front lines in Ukraine. Is this a war that you really want to fight on behalf of Ukraine? We should just give up now and just withdraw. So I'm very interested, and that's really what we're hearing, right?
We should close all of our bases. We should never annoy Russia in any way in the future. They're our friends anyway, right? Sure.
And I would like better relations with Russia. I certainly would. But, I also understand the realities of geopolitics, and nation states do things that they think are in their best interests. And in this case, Putin is, he's building the bricks and building a parallel economy. It's an economic war as much as anything else. And what we're seeing happen in Ukraine is, well, it's I'm going to throw it to you and just let you explain your perspective. We're not going to see a conscription? You don't think we're going to see a draft as a result of any of this?
Well, you mean here in North America, in Canada, and the U.S.? Or
yeah, because they're saying that they're running out of troops in Ukraine. So the only way to continue the war is to send NATO troops, and that means sending our guys in.
There's plenty. Listen, in Lviv, I was pissed off when I got demobilized. I was bloody and hurt, and had just seen some of my brothers killed. And I go to Lviv, and there's all these, Kyiv was reasonably locked down, and Kharkiv was definitely locked down. But, in Lviv, there was a bunch of young, fit guys out playing Frisbee at the park, at Taras Shevchenko Park. There's this big park in downtown Lviv. And I remember walking by and giving them the evil eye. And, Ukraine doesn't have inexhaustible supplies of manpower. Neither does Russia, by the way, although they'd like you to believe they do. Russia does have a lot more fit fighting age men to draw on than Ukraine does. But Ukraine still has reserves. They still have people. They're trying not to call up. They're trying to call up just enough guys. Like Israel made this mistake, right? After October 6th, they called up too many people, and it really hurt their economy. And so then they dialed it back and sent a bunch of them home. I got some Israeli friends. They're like, yeah, I went to the marshalling yard, hung out there for a week, and then they sent me home. It's stupid, right? Because, there's a balance there. If you call up too many of your citizen soldiers, your economy is going to suffer. And so Ukraine finally passed this long-awaited, long-delayed mobilization order. And so they're going to get more troops. Is it going to be enough troops? I don't know. It's a good question. And Russia definitely has been mobilizing. And like I said on the last program I was on, they, after that big presidential election, it's kind of a rubber stamp. But after Putin was reconfirmed as president, they quietly mobilized another couple 100,000. And now they're being trained up. As I predicted, late May, early June, they're going to make a push on some major cities. I'm not going to say which cities, but it wouldn't come as a big surprise to anybody following. And so now they're doing that. They're trying to push. They're actually getting an early start on it because they want to take as much ground as possible before those HIMARS arrive, basically. And so it is a concerning situation. Does it mean that Ukraine's going to lose the war? I mean, no. It means that they'll be somewhat more limited. They won't have as much free reign to say plan another counteroffensive like they did last year. I doubt there's going to be any kind of a counteroffensive in 2024. If there is, I hope it's planned a lot better than the last one. But does it mean that we're going to be conscripted? I mean, that's here in the U.S. That's just a dumb scare tactic. Anybody who'd say that doesn't know his proper brand of propaganda, because there's much more effective propaganda that would work on an American audience than saying that you're going to get conscripted and sent to the trenches of eastern Ukraine. I don't think that would really fly.
So you are kind of rejecting that argument, and I guess if I'm hearing you correctly, you think that part of the narrative is really just being used to undermine support for the war. And I guess when I say support, funding for the war.
Yeah, I mean, so there are legitimate, I would say, concerns about the war, and there's effective ways for people who are against the war to articulate those concerns. Concerns about, is the money being properly vetted? Is it going to the right units? Is, how much is this of the equipment that's being sent? How much is it effective equipment that the Ukrainians really need, or are we just cleaning out our warehouses to make more money for arms manufacturers? There's a lengthy list of legitimate concerns about how our aid money is being spent. Arguments like, oh, hey, our kids are going to get conscripted and sent to the trench. Like, I don't know who's going to believe that. That's kind of out there.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's 180 degrees on the opposite side of what we're hearing from, some of the really prominent analysts, if you want to call them that, out there. But I will say this: those guys, I've watched over the last 2 years, they've been consistently wrong. They keep saying the war's over, might as well give up. But here we are 2 years later, and they're still saying the same thing. What about these F-16s, which we're hearing from those guys? It's like these F-16s will be considered by Putin to be nuclear-capable aircraft, able to carry nuclear weapons, and because of that, they're just going to be instantly destroyed, and it's a provocation and escalation from the West.
Well, it is an escalation, and you could call anything a provocation. I mean, really, besides it, the HIMARS have been the best thing we've sent over there. The HIMARS work really well, and these Attackams are really amazing. I'm a little concerned the Russians did demonstrate capability to shoot them down, but that's limited, and that's less so much at the front lines. It's more if the Ukrainians shoot them into Russia, then the Russians have really good air defense at the border. But at the front lines, they don't have as good an air defense against that particular type of missile. That might change in the future. But I think those Attackams are going to make a big difference. Now, and so you can call those a provocation and an escalation. I mean, every bullet we send over there is an escalation, I mean, as long as we're not sending boots on the ground, then I'd say, according to the normal rules of war and international relations, we have not declared war on Russia. And that's the line that has to be followed. I mean, our F-16... So first of all, F-16s. Okay, so I'm not. Maybe call me a ground pounder. Blame my infantry roots in the U.S. Army and then over there in Ukraine. But I'm not a huge. I don't think the F-16s are going to make a huge difference in this conflict. I think they'll be helpful, sure, and they'll be a symbol of American technological superiority, and maybe we'll get some good test data out of it. And they might shoot down a couple Su-27s, which would be great because those things are raining glide bombs on Kharkiv like there's no tomorrow, and it's a huge problem. So that might help a little bit. Really, the Attackams are vastly more effective, and really what the Ukrainian military needs is about 100,000 more PVS-14s. $2,000 to $3,000 night vision. They desperately need that, or thermals for their weapons. $3,000 thermals. If every infantry squad, if every infantry squad in the 250,000 frontline deployed Ukrainian units had each soldier had a PVS-14, like every soldier in my unit before I went to war did, and a helmet mount for it, and then if 1 out of every 6 soldiers in the assault squads had a $3,000 thermal sight on his weapon. Huge game changer, huge, because a lot of the combat now happens at night, and both sides are really kind of blindly groping around. I've heard numerous stories of my buddies over there having to crawl through minefields to do their combat ops, and trying to weigh, okay, the moon's out tonight, so we can get stuff done, but it's too bright. We better stay indoors, things like that. And then, of course, the FPV drones and the recon drones, they're starting to switch over from regular optics to thermal. So the battle space is very much transitioning to nighttime. I think that would make a vastly greater difference. But F-16s look good. They roll off the tongue. People who are not military-minded think that they're going to make a huge difference. So, maybe there'll be a morale booster. Who knows? But the thing is, both sides have such good, strong anti-aircraft defenses that I just don't see them being used too heavily at the front lines. And plus, they're so maintenance intensive. I just see them breaking soon and having to be sent back to Poland or Germany. So I'm not a huge F-16 guy. Hope that answers your question.
Well, I've been saying for a long time, this is an information war as much as anything else. That might, I think, actually be the main front line, especially where Russia is concerned. And I have to tell you, I think you're losing the information war.
That's kind of
badly,
true.
Very, very badly. And I'm just looking in our chat here tonight, and you don't have a whole lot of support here, sir. So I'm going to throw it to you. Why should people care? I have to say, too, I'm going to preface this way. I can't think of a time, either in my lifetime or before that I'm aware of, where there has been so much public pushback against people's own country, where, this is essentially a pro-U.S., pro-Ukrainian alliance, right? NATO. And there's so much anti-NATO emotion, I think, involved here. And it's a result of the information war. People, you justify it. You tell these folks why you think it's important for people to, for this war to continue to have Western support.
Well, so you point out that there's a lot of people, especially conservative folks, who unfortunately have been very effectively propagandized against their own national interests. And you point out that the information war, the propaganda, is not being effectively fought. I think we are effectively fighting the orcs in Ukraine. I think the U.S. support is the reason why Ukraine is still in the fight. I think if we didn't provide those weapons, they would have had to kneel to the Russian boot by now. But you point out a good thing, which is a truth, that is that while the Russian military is very strong and effective, their propaganda army is much more effective. And I mean, they've attacked. I view it as an attack. They've used their propaganda on Western democracies for decades now. Let's not forget, Putin is a former KGB officer. He learned all this stuff firsthand. And he was sent to Germany specifically to propagandize and to subvert the German people. And, they attacked our democracy. They put their finger on the scale of our elections. And it doesn't matter if you're pro or anti-Trump. It just matters that we can't have a foreign country affecting our elections. We can't allow that. And there's been some changes and some safeguards put in place to try to minimize that. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with this coming election, because clearly they would have some favorites there. But we'll see what kind of sticky Russian fingers we find on the knobs there. But why should the average American care? Why should the average American ignore the propaganda that's telling them to we should put our heads in the sand, we should, close our overseas bases, we should stop supporting Ukraine, we should pull out of NATO, we should just mind our own corner, right? We should mind our own knitting. And I've seen all these great memes online on all these Facebook groups where it shows a picture of the globe and it says, this is where my tax dollars should go. And it's just the United States. And for your viewers, it would be just Canada, right? And I mean, I understand that perspective, especially when people are paying way too much for gas and and you look at the price of groceries now and inflation. And then, it's easy to be angry about that. And people should be angry about that, and they should vote, to change that. But if you are voting if you think those issues are related, if you think that your gas is expensive because you're supporting freedom in Ukraine, well, guess what? Whoever's connecting those two probably has an ulterior motive, and their ulterior motive is to destroy the ability of America and Canada and Western democracies to stand for good in the world. And I mean, Hitler was not a dumb guy, but he was not very smart when it came to propaganda. If you look historically, he tried to, he had kind of an abortive effort to activate German minorities and German immigrants in other countries. Of course, he did that very successfully in Czechoslovakia. And he tried to do that in the United States. There's a famous rally in Madison Square Garden in, I believe it was 1938, that over 100,000 people showed up at. But he didn't really do it effectively, and nowhere near the way Putin is doing this. And Putin is much smarter about it. The way Putin does it is he identifies existing grievances, existing problems and divisions within society, and he supports the extremists on the far left and on the far right. And then he amplifies existing problems. So like I said, people are upset because their gas is way too expensive, and they see the policies of their government is making things worse, not better. And they're angry about this, and there was a contested election, and they feel their voices were not heard. And And if they try to speak up about this, they're just shouted down, right? Told that they're deplorables. And if they, question the situation, well, they must be racist or sexist or another ist, right? And so they should just shut up. And so, of course, they're angry about this, as they should be angry about this. But then they have to realize that anytime you're angry, you're susceptible to being manipulated. And the way Putin's propaganda works is it says, you're angry about this problem, this divisions in your society. Well, the solution to that is to stop supporting these people overseas who are fighting for their freedom. And if you think about it, there's no connection. Just like supporting England in 1940 and 1941 before the United States joined the war on England's behalf, that was in our national interest. Supporting freedom around the world is in our interest. Now, did we have a lot of problems at that time and a lot of domestic concerns? And could we have spent all that money on other things? Yeah. I mean, during World War II, the maximum tax rate was 90%. It was crazy. Could we have built our own economy instead of sending all those ships and all those supplies to England before we entered the war? Yeah. But was it the right thing to do to support them in 1940 and 41? I would strongly argue, yeah. And I think most Americans and Canadians would agree that it was the right thing to do. And so that's my argument. I'm not going to delve into a bunch of data and say, hey, we're going to, sending Ecampments to Ukraine is going to boost our economy by this much, or, there's other financial reasons we should do this or whatever. No, none of that really matters. What matters is doing the right thing. And I would say, I would appeal to your listeners. I mean, feel free to write in the comments, give me rational, logical reasons why supporting Ukraine is not the moral thing to do. Like, don't say, oh, we should spend our money securing the southern border. I totally agree we should secure the southern border. But you know what? Stopping supporting Ukraine is not going to secure the southern border. Those issues are not linked. Again, they're not linked. And we should do both. We're a big, rich country. We should be able to chew gum and run at the same time. So give me a logical, moral reason why we shouldn't support Ukraine. I'd be curious.
Sure. I mean, I personally, I didn't want the war to start. I'm not in favor of wars, but now we're into the middle of this thing. And I do see that if Ukraine falls and Russia, say, takes over the whole country, I see real problems that will develop here in the West. I see the cracks that have developed in NATO maybe becoming a lot worse, and maybe even NATO breaking apart. But I'm not going to sit here and just spout off with my opinions. You tell the audience, what, in your view, would happen if Ukraine falls back into Russian hands?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I've actually done quite a bit of research on what would be the likely consequences of Ukrainian failure, Ukrainian loss, Ukrainian defeat. And I don't talk about this subject with the members of my group, so I look forward to talking to you about it, because I don't want to. Ukrainians have a very emotionally invested interest in their country succeeding as a democracy, right? So this is a topic that is not really easy to have with them, in my experience. But I think it's important for cooler heads to consider all possibilities. What is it they say? Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And so what would it mean if Russia conquered Ukraine? So, and this is, by the way, entirely possible. The flow of arms could immediately end at any time, perhaps with a change of administration, or there could be a major event like Zelensky. There's been over a dozen assassination attempts on Zelensky, and they could get him. They could get him at any time. That would make a huge negative blow to Ukrainian morale and Ukrainian ability to fight.
In fact, he just fired his bodyguard because of this most recent assassination attempt. So that is something I was going to talk about tonight, but I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'll let you continue.
I actually hadn't heard that. I'm going to have to Google it. So very interesting. There's been a lot of assassination attempts on him. Putin sent several kill teams to Kyiv in the opening stages of the conflict, but he's been steadily sending assassins that have been more and more and more sophisticated throughout the conflict. So As I understand it, Zelensky is one of the most heavily guarded men on the planet, which makes his ability to lead his country much harder, of course. So anyway, so Russia could indeed win. They could. So what would a win by Russia mean? Well, so the most likely victory would be gradual successes on the battlefield, leading to a ceasefire that would harden the Russian positions within Ukraine, and therefore de facto causing the roughly 18% of Ukrainian territory that's in Russian hands to become essentially part of Russia for all intents and purposes. It would probably be decades before they were officially confirmed as such by the United Nations, but for all intents and purposes, they would be, much as Crimea is today. So that's let's say phase one, option one. If that were to happen, then the Russians would shift to an attempt at regime change in Kyiv, and they would attempt to overthrow Zelensky or encourage some sort of astroturfed Ukrainian movement to overthrow Zelensky and replace him with Yanukovych or one of these other pro-Russia politicians that they have waiting in the wings. You know, they've got they've got a bench of them. They've got a bench of them for every country. They probably have them for Canada and the U.S. too, but they've got them ready. And so that would be what they would try to do is they would try to make things as miserable for the average Ukrainian for as long as possible until the average Ukrainian says, you know what, enough. Let's just go to our regular lives and let's overthrow. I'll look away while some group overthrows Zelensky, and then we can get back to our lives as usual. That's been Putin's plan. So if they do that, those two outcomes are the most likely. A less likely but still possible outcome would be that Russia conquers the entire country and slowly converts it into a pro-Russia satellite of Russia. If that happens, then they would probably build Russian military bases along the Polish-Ukrainian border, along the Romanian-Moldovan border. And if that were to happen, that would require NATO to rebuild the dozens of bases that we had, in West Germany and Poland and Czechoslovakia. One of those bases I served at 20 years ago, right after the Cold War, but the bases are still there. We would have to rebuild those along the Polish and Romanian and Hungarian Ukrainian border. And then we would have to staff them with hundreds of thousands of troops. So you're talking about trillions of dollars of defense spending that would otherwise not need to be spent. Now, would we need to build those bases if just the option one or option two overthrow of the country were completed? It's a question mark. There's a good chance that Putin would not build any bases next to the border just because he wouldn't want to provoke Poland. And Poland has one of the strongest militaries in Europe now. You could argue Poland has a stronger military than Germany now. So Poland's armed to the teeth. And so they probably are not going to be invading Poland anytime soon. But let's say they complete the takeover of Ukraine. They have a pro-Ukraine government installed. What happens next? So NATO would have to respond in some way, probably with a lot more troops. And you've already seen the increased defense spending by Western democracies, Western countries, Germany, France, Spain, all the rest, which is good. It's long overdue, frankly. So then the defense analysts that I've seen are, and actually this is not secret. They uncovered a Russian planning document for invading a part of one of the Baltic countries, probably Estonia. Estonia has a large number of Russian-speaking, Russian-sympathizing residents. Some of them are Estonian citizens. Some of them are Russian citizens that happen to live in Estonia. Same for Latvia and Lithuania, but to a lesser extent. And so this planning document showed that a plan for Russia to reconquer a part of Estonia that was traditionally Russian and had a very low population on it. of primarily Russian-speaking Estonians. And so if Putin had some little green men, right? Not Russian military. Oh no, they're Russian civilians on vacation with no insignias, right? If they were to go into Estonia and they were to take this little chunk of land and stop, then if the American president at that time and the head of NATO at that time says, you know what, we're not going to go to war for a couple square kilometers in Estonia that used to belong to Russia, that has people in it who are happy to belong to Russia again or be Russian citizens again. If they say that, then essentially NATO no longer exists because Article 5 will no longer carry any weight. And so that was what this Russian defense planning document said, is that if they can essentially drive a wedge within NATO and basically destroy the ability of Article 5 to deter future conflicts, then NATO as an organization would not have it would be defanged, essentially. So that's one future scenario that we would have to prepare for. There's a lot more. Russia probably, based on the poor performance of its military and how much they've had to drain their economy to pour into this conflict in Ukraine, probably they're not going to be picking any major fights with anyone again real soon. Plus, I don't know if you're following events in Georgia, but they might be involved there sometime soon. So their focus after Ukraine would probably shift a little bit. And plus, viewers of this program may not be aware, but Russia and China actually don't really get along all that well. And therefore, Russia has had some traditional border conflicts and concerns about their eastern border as well. So long story short, what would it mean for a Russian victory in Ukraine? It would mean a lot more money and concern and threats for NATO. It might damage NATO's ability to function long term. And of course, it would be horrific for the 40+ Ukrainians who would have to live under the Russian boot. And there would be a lot more international effects where authoritarians around the world would take heed of Russia's success and come to their own conclusions on that, right? I mean, China would realize, well, if it worked for Russia in Ukraine, it will probably work for us in Taiwan. You can see the results of this long term. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question.
Sure. And if NATO breaks up, this really, you talk about the new multipolar geopolitical reality that, we do hear discussions on. If NATO ceases to exist, man, that is a completely new scenario, and that would have a direct impact on the economy here in so many different ways, because it's going to affect oil prices, the oil trade, the American dollar, because it's all very much connected. The economy here is really supported by international stability, the flow of goods through shipping, which that would all be in jeopardy. I can see real instability. People, I think, it's lost on people here how much impact it would have if Ukraine were to actually fall. It's a big concern to me, but
yeah, well, it's a big concern to me too, and it definitely would have a negative effect on a lot of international trade, and it would probably, I'm sure some people would make money off it no matter what, but it would be a negative to us economically. I'm more focused on the moral aspects. I feel that defending Ukraine is the right thing to do. Is it gonna help my country economically? Probably. But that's not my primary concern. I feel like America and Canada will be all right.
I have to say too that the leaders, when I hear Biden on CNN yesterday talking about how civilians have been killed with U.S. bombs in Gaza, I'm thinking, wow, that guy's not very good at PR.
He's not very good at anything, is he?
I know. It's like, whose side are you on? it really, a lot of this does come down to public relations, and and propaganda. And it's hard to know exactly
One
what
person's PR is another person's propaganda.
Yeah, I don't know where it's all. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because I wanted some balance and perspective for people here, because all we're hearing over here is it's basically over, and we should just give up. It's kind of like listening to Tokyo Rose, but the Russian
Right.
version, right? Hey, yeah, Joe, you give up now. It's no
Right.
use, right?
Yeah, the war will be over next week, just like we said it would be last year and the year before. Right.
Yeah. Do you see connection between what's going on in Gaza and Israel and what's happening in
Well, it's interesting
Ukraine?
you asked that. I mean, I'm very insulated from what's going on in Israel, Palestine. I don't really pay a lot of attention. It's made my life a lot harder as someone who's supporting Ukrainian military units. It's definitely, I don't know if Putin was behind October 6th in some way or another. I do wonder, because he's been very close to Iran, and he did host several delegations from Hamas in Moscow. But if he was behind it, he was a genius, because it dramatically hurt the Ukrainian war effort. To give you one example, I mean, first of all, it wiped Ukraine right off the front pages, like you said. In the PR battle, it was a masterstroke. And then a lot of the donations dried up, because people are giving it to either one side or the other side of the Israel-Palestine thing. And then for me, if I'm trying to buy PVS 14s in bulk, I couldn't buy them. I mean, I could buy them off Amazon for $1,000 markup, but otherwise I couldn't get them for any normal supplier for 2 months, because Israel was buying every single one they could. So it really, and there were some other impacts too, but
I don't know if you're aware, like
go ahead.
the date of the Hamas invasion and the attack is actually October 7th. And do you know when Vladimir Putin's birthday is?
When?
October 7th.
Okay, I was unaware. Wow.
I'm just saying.
Well, I think the delegations from
It's the
Hamas,
gift that keeps on giving.
for sure. No, I mean, he definitely benefited from that. Of course, a lot of other people suffered it. The terrible thing. I try not to pick a dog in that fight. I think it's unfortunate what's happening to both sides. I'd love for there to be some sort of a peace, and some sort of peace, and some sort of a trustworthy government in the occupied territories in Gaza and in it's not occupied, excuse me, but I'm using Ukrainian terms, but in Gaza and in the West Bank.
Yeah, just to show people I'm not making it up. Okay, that's Vladimir Putin's birthday, October 7th, 1952.
That's funny. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Hey, folks, don't shoot the messenger. Okay, you guys in the chat. I'm just saying.
It's all Rick's fault. He planned
I
it.
know. I have to tell you, like, some people's heads were blowing up around here after I had you on the first time, and I think they're blowing up again tonight for some of these folks, because, there is absolutely a
Disconnect.
yeah. Anyway, man, I just don't know. This is such an interesting conversation. Carl, I'm not sure where to take the conversation from here. I just where can people get in touch with you or find out more? Tell them about your website and your contact info.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, we make an effort to help provide resources for volunteers to get involved. Our goal is to make it easy for anybody on the planet to support Ukraine and really support the cause of freedom. We've got a number of resources here. So, I mean, on our website, we've got guides to buying, I don't know if you can see that, buying drones, buying night vision, buying, there we go. Buying night vision, buying vehicles. We just bought our 10th Humvee this last weekend. I'll be working on it this weekend. It's a beautiful ambulance Humvee. We're going to get it over there in less than a month. I'm super excited about it. So we've got lots of ways that people can get involved. There's lots of projects on PR to fight Russian propaganda. to help tell the truth to people. We've got a really active communities of faith engagement team that's doing some amazing work connecting Ukrainian pastors with American pastors and American congregants, and just really telling the incredibly impactful stories of Russian persecution of Christians in the occupied territories, just horrific stories. I think I have a really good packet on that. So we're doing a lot of outreach in churches, in synagogues, both churches, Catholic, Orthodox, and a lot of evangelical churches. So Washington State has the one of the largest concentrations of Ukrainians in the country, and frankly in the world. Got about 200,000 here. They're primarily evangelical, and so we do a lot of presentations at their churches. And we try to connect them with American pastors and reverends to pray together and work together to help free the Ukrainian people. So there's lots of ways, lots of projects that people can get involved in. They can just go to the website and fill out the form, and it'll go to our onboarding team, and we'll reach out and identify how, what would be interesting for you to work on. We've got several weekly Zoom calls people can join. Of course, if they're here in Seattle, they can come in person to our in-person meetings on Thursday nights. But if they're national or even international, we've got calls all week long on various topics. We got an anti-drone call tomorrow where there's a group called Tech for Ukraine that's doing amazing work on anti-drone technology and encrypted communications and supercharging Starlinks. And they're doing some really interesting things with Starlinks, I'll say. I can't really explain all the details, but really interesting things. So there's a lot of ways to get involved. Most groups just want people to give them money and then go away, but we're not that way. We want to get people involved, have them work directly with Ukrainian military units, and meet the soldiers and really get the firsthand knowledge of what life's like over there and how these people are defending their homes and their families and their way of life. It's really a life-changing experience to talk to these people and see how they're really fighting for their freedom and for our freedom. So yeah, if people want to go to the website, they're welcome to contact me that way. And I just wanted to close with just mention for some of your viewers and listeners whose heads might be exploding. I mean, it's important to have a balanced news diet and get outside of the bubble. And, make sure that you listen to stuff you disagree with occasionally and get the perspective. Even if you disagree with it, it's important to know that some people feel that way, even if you just want to argue with them, or even if you just want to know what they're thinking. Because I think, I can't speak for Canada, but here in the United States, we are more divided than at any time since the Vietnam War. And a lot of that comes down to just people not talking to each other and people getting their news from very different sources and not looking at the big picture and not realizing that, especially the mainstream media has an agenda, and they have they have their pitch, and they're going to push you into their box. And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing, is helping free people from that mental imprisonment, really, and give them a dose of the truth, and also sharing both perspectives on important issues like Ukraine. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, yesterday, we were talking a little bit here, and I did show a little bit of footage of the Russian Victory Day parade. That is very much part of the Russian PR machine, right? Both domestically and internationally. And when I'm watching that stuff, I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive, and very high production value on the video side. And they've got cranes for the video cameras, and it's beautifully shot. And this is sending a message around the world of power, organization, public support for Putin, for the war effort, very patriotic. Here in the West, I'm not seeing as much of that, but that I think is because we live in a kind of a free, open society where people are allowed to express their opinions and, are even vulnerable to, I think, foreign information warfare. So we've got more chaos over here. It might not come off as being as patriotic, but it certainly is, I think, to a degree, freer. It might seem very regimented over there, but, maybe it's better if we're not all goose stepping.
Yeah, but
parade,
Trump wanted to have a military parade, and he's absolutely right. And they shot him down because they didn't want to pour a bunch of extra concrete in Washington D.C. because tanks destroy streets, right? I know I was a tanker. But I mean, I don't know why we couldn't do that. I think a large number of Americans, I mean, there's going to be some people who are like, "Ew, tanks, gross," whatever. Those people don't have to watch. But I think that, like you said, it shows power and strength and patriotism and support for the military and military support for the state. Frankly, I don't see what's wrong with that. And I wish that we'd do that here. You know who else does that is France. I mean, France hosted Trump. And for one of those military parades, I think it was on the Champs-Elysees, and he was very impressed. Why can't we do that? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Carl, thank you so much for, again, spending the time here with us tonight. I think it's super important to provide the balance and, various perspectives on this. Otherwise, people can't really make an informed decision. You can't do that with just one perspective or one side of a story. So I'm really very appreciative.
Well, of course, happy to be here. Happy to come back any other time. And yeah, if any of your viewers want to get in touch, I'd be happy to talk to them. I think that there's a great way. Now is the time. This is our fight. So thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. My pleasure. And look forward to having you back again. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Larson, Crane Defense Support. I'll be back right after this. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, folks, I am back, and we can continue with a little bit more of today's top news stories. One of the things that I did want to talk to you about is this big geopolitical, not politics at all. It's like a geomagnetic super solar storm that is it's brewing out there, and the first waves of these solar flares, the energy coming from that, have started to hit Earth now. As a result, I guess we're going to see some spectacular northern lights. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever witnessed or seen the northern lights, but they're beautiful. Here in Canada, and certainly up north you get to see them, but they're going to be so powerful, from all that I'm reading and hearing about this, that they'll be visible potentially even from as far away as Texas. So that's pretty cool. As a result, we're getting a bunch of different media, like even local media down as far as Texas and over in Seattle. They're talking about this. I think it's going to be more spectacular than the eclipse we just went through. Here's this is Fox 4. I'm going to run a couple of reports from local media outlets. This is Dallas, Fox 4. Here's what they have to say about it. This is pretty cool stuff. Let's listen in.
The strongest solar storm to strike Earth since 2005 is on its way tonight. Because of that, NOAA did issue a geomagnetic storm watch for the planet Earth. This is due to a G4 class solar storm, which is severe on the scale. Now, some of the effects that we might see from this tonight are possible voltage issues to the power grid up north. Disruptions are possible to satellite navigation as well, and auroras could be possible all the way down to the Gulf Coast tonight, especially on the horizon. If you want to have a good shot at seeing this, you are going to have to get out of areas of light pollution and also use a camera as well to see it best on the horizon. Now, if you really want to see it tonight, you're going to have to go north up into places like South Dakota, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, and especially up into Canada.
Yeah, up here in Canuckland, where the northern lights look like this. Let me show you some videography. This is not tonight. This is recorded footage dating back to, this was actually 1 year ago, but this is footage shot in Canada, northern Canada. And look at the beautiful northern lights, man. There's some music on this, but I'm going to take that off so we don't get a copyright strike. But look at this stuff. So this solar storm, which is having an impact on conditions here on Earth tonight and over the weekend, you're going to see a lot of this stuff. And it's going to be so powerful, these lights will be visible potentially as far away as Texas. So very unusual. I'm going to spend some time tonight. I'm going to go out, walk my dog, and take a look and see if I can get a gander at, what do they call these? The Aurora Borealis? You know, the northern lights. Very cool stuff. Look at that. That's real. Like, that's not just computer generated stuff. This footage, I know, this is just shot on video, not edited, not just plain raw footage. And that's what it can look like. That was a year ago. Tonight, it's supposed to be even more intense, and over the weekend. So if you can get out of the city into an area where you don't have too much light pollution, no matter where you are in Canada and parts of the United States, you may be able to witness some of this action. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Mother Nature is so powerful, isn't it? Isn't she? Beautiful stuff. It kind of puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Makes you feel kind of small, I would say. Here's a report from, well, since we had Carl Larson on from Seattle, let's go to Seattle and see what they're saying down there at Fox 13. Let's bring this up. Don't miss this. You don't want to miss the Aurora Borealis.
Hey, welcome back. 7:14. Check it out. You're not going to want to miss this. A severe geomagnetic storm forecasted for this weekend means there's a chance to see the northern lights. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we're forecasting to see mostly clear skies, so that's good news. The storm is predicted for late tonight, early tomorrow morning. So the best chance to see the aurora is typically between midnight and 3 a.m. when the sky is at its most darkest point. It's also best to get far away from city lights and the pollution of those lights. And I've seen it before. It's such a cool thing. You really don't have to go that far. You just get a little bit away from the city lights.
Just get away from the city lights if you can, yeah. And I mean, mountains are a good spot, or up toward the San Juans. Just get away from the main cities, and then you should be able to see it late tonight between midnight and 3 a.m. It'll be on the dimmer side where we live, but northern parts of Washington could have a much better chance of zooming. And you can see the red is where we're going to see it the best, brightest up in Canada. Boy, are they lucky. But we will be able to see it, or should be able to see it, in the green area, which encompasses our entire state. Even down in Oregon, they may be able to see it as well.
Yeah, well, might be lucky right now, but not so lucky, say, in January. Especially if you live in northern Canada, where you're going to get hit with weather that might be beautiful, but boy, it's cold up there. Too cold for me. That's why I'm down here in southern Ontario. I don't know. I'm going to look in the chat here. Have you guys, how many of you have actually witnessed in a real way the northern lights? Just going to take a look in the chat. Jilly Bean, of course, going straight to the Carrington event. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so there we are talking about the beautiful northern lights and how bright and colorful they are, and instantly going to darkness and despair. I'm not too worried about it. I think we'll get through it okay there, Jilly Bean. We're going to make it. The solar storm, I don't think, is going to kill us. Here's Rising Dragon, 1 in the 90th. He says, I don't know what that means. Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith says, I have. It's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, that just amazing stuff. Now, here is another report from WDIV Detroit, Michigan. Just down the road from me. Not too far from where I live, only about an hour. Let's get their perspective on this. WDIV, they're going to tell us what we should see in our area right here.
Now to something that's truly out of this world. A severe geomagnetic storm could move through northern lights, could make the northern lights visible in Metro Detroit tonight. According to a National Space Weather Prediction Center, conditions are really good for it. Now here's the warning from the Weather Service, and it's this line right here. Aurora may be seen as low as Pennsylvania to Iowa to Oregon. Now, here's a look at the aurora forecast. Yes, that's a real thing. It shows Michigan down right here on that line. Let's get out to Priya Mann. Priya, we normally hear about this happening up north, not down here in Metro Detroit, huh?
Yeah, Damon, you could almost say the stars have aligned for more reasons than one. It happens to be astronomy night here at the Detroit Observatory on the campus of University of Michigan. And for storm chasers and science enthusiasts, this is as big as it gets. Just think about it like this. It's the Eras Tour and it's the NFL Draft all combined in one, except the stage is our gorgeous sky.
And I had just gotten a text that there might be an aurora borealis tonight, and so I was thinking, well, is it true? Absolutely.
The excitement for tonight's celestial show is growing by the minute.
They want to know where to see the aurora. They want to know how they can see the aurora, if they can see the aurora.
In the aurora borealis storm chaser community, where does this rank?
Oh man, this is up there.
Melissa Kalin has been an aurora storm chaser for a dozen years, but this G4 storm, and mind you, they only go up to G5, might top her list of geomagnetic storms.
It means that almost one of the most powerful aurora displays possible is headed our way right now.
It's the first time since 2005 that scientists can predict the intensity of the aurora, and that's because of 5 massive solar flares over the past few days.
These charged particles will collide with air molecules like oxygen and nitrogen to emit light and color.
And that's what we're going to be seeing play out in the sky.
That's what we'll see tonight, yeah.
Your best bet to view the aurora borealis is somewhere dark, away from city lights.
It's amazing. I mean, one thing, when people go out tonight, if they can find dark skies and look up, they're gonna see aurora formations and movement. They're gonna see pillars and waves and swirls, and hopefully lots of color.
It's going to be quite the spectacle. So to be clear, the aurora is going to start in the northeast, move north. We could see it right where we are here in Metro Detroit. The best viewing times is between 1 and 4 this morning. And of course, it doesn't hurt. Maybe you want to get out there right after sunset, secure that spot. But between 1 and 4 in the morning is your best bet to see it. Sometimes it's actually interesting. Your camera will pick it up even if you can't see it. And if it is cloudy, just give it a little bit. Maybe the clouds will move on through and you'll be able to see some of those gorgeous colors, but this will definitely be one for the memory books. Reporting live in Ann Arbor, I'm Priya Mann, Local 4.
Oh man, Priya, between 1 and 4 in the morning, it sounds like it's going to be a late night over there at the observatory.
Yeah. Well, actually, astronomy night runs from 8:30 to 10:30, so it's going to be great. I mean, the conversation here is going to be stellar, but again, experts are advising you to get to a darker place to check out the aurora. I also want to make clear it's at the Judy and Stanley Frankel Detroit Observatory. There's several on campus, and you do need to register beforehand. We have that information up on clickondetroit.com. Send it back to you.
All right, Priya, good information. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Guys, it's like every day we're on here, we're talking about the news, right? So much darkness in the world. But as I sit here tonight, I don't know if you guys are religious. If you're people of faith, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But kind of makes you realize that somewhere out there, there has to be a higher power. Somebody's speaking to us. Doesn't matter how bad it gets out there, folks. There's more than hope. Julie Bean, Carrington event or no Carrington event, I look up tonight, I see that, and I just know. We're going to be okay, guys. We're going to make it. I'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same station. Love you guys. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.